there's a difference between being childish and being childlike. When you're childlike, you are adventurous, you are playful, you are curious, and you have the ability to let go. Kids, when you offend them, 1 minute they're angry, the next minute they're like happy they forgot whatever made them angry. So when you're childish, there's a lot of selfishness, self-centeredness. There's a lot of impulsivity and emotional outbursts. And this emotional immaturity that we have. And I think the challenge in life is, how do you grow into an adult who keeps their childlikeness, but again, you grow out of your childishness. And I think this is something that a lot of us struggle with, where sometimes you feel like people are adults in a child's body or in a toddler's body. Why? Because they are an adult age-wise, but when it comes to their emotional maturity, they have not yet let go of childish things. And again, to be fair, sometimes it's also because growing up, we are not taught how to deal with our own emotions, or even to deal with the emotions of other people. And so we end up growing up also not knowing how to do it. And so I think, if you think about it, even in a lot of our kind of church spaces, whenever we talk about maturity, we often focus on spiritual maturity most of the time. And again, if you're not like a church person, you might also end up only focusing on the emotional side of things. And I think it's important that we strike that balance way, because again, one might even go further to ask a question to say, can you really achieve full maturity by only focusing on one side?
We hope you're enjoying this episode so far. Please consider subscribing to our channel.
By subscribing to our channel, you're playing your part in growing our online community and helping us reach more people who are in need of healing, restoration, and growth. Thank you so much for your support. And I believe that there's a need to strike a balance. And obviously, spiritual maturity is important, but I just wanted us to focus on emotional maturity and why it's important. Why do you think it's important?
And I think if you haven't already picked up, the conversation today is about emotional maturity, and the importance of it. And as you mentioned, hopefully there's a desire, for us as Christians to grow. And as our platform is all about, healing, restoration, and growth, what we want, or what God wants actually through us is really to help people heal from past wounds, and then, because those things are stumbling block for growth. And I think that is something that God wants us to do, is to grow, that spiritual maturity. But He also understands that, without emotional maturity, we can't grow spiritually. So I think just to echo what you said, that they go hand in hand, and sometimes we'll focus on one and not the other. And I think so that is the reason why we're discussing this, is like, okay, so how do we understand emotional maturity, and what can we do about it? so that we can grow spiritually and emotionally. So I think, that's why it's so important for us to discuss that today.
And as you're talking, it also reminds me of Jesus as an example of that full maturity in action. So scripture tells us that he was full of grace and truth. He was full of truth and grace.
Yeah.
So truth is about assertiveness. It's about confronting things even when they're uncomfortable. And we see that in Jesus. He called out, a spade, and but at the same time, there was the love side of him where there was the compassion, there was the empathy, there was the understanding. And so in Christ, we see like a good balance of both truth and love. And so for many of us, we often tend to go to the extreme, and you'll find that there are people who are very assertive, but in being assertive, they become very insensitive. Sometimes they even become impulsive, where they say things that hurt other people, and they say things that later on, they regret. On the other side of understanding, you have people who are so understanding to a point where they almost kind of put their own feelings aside, and sometimes they leave things to fester, and and one day they just lose it. Why? Because they've been so understanding, so accommodating, and they have not allowed that firm, assertive, confrontational side of them to show. And when it shows,
We hope you're enjoying this episode so far. Please consider subscribing to our channel.
By subscribing to our channel, you're playing your part in growing our online community and helping us reach more people who are in need of healing, restoration, and growth. Thank you so much for your support.
it's in a way that is so ugly that people even wonder, where was all of this? And I think that's, and when we look at the story of Jesus, it really kind of gives us a good balance of, the assertive, the truth side of things, and the love side of things.
You're basically saying he embodied emotional maturity, because emotional maturity, as we'll get to the definition later on, is really that balance between assertiveness and compassion, so whether you are too assertive or too compassionate, that can be signs of emotional immaturity, would say. And I think also, as you mentioned, just Jesus embodying, emotional maturity, he also embodied, or he was fully man and also fully God, and so in that way we understand that even Jesus himself, didn't just focus on spiritual things. He was also human, What comes to mind is, we all know the famous story of, Jesus turning water into wine. When his mother said to him, hey, please, the wine has run out, please do something there, From a human point of view, he obeyed his mother's instruction, and he also understood the embarrassment of not having wine. I'm sure that was obviously a family friend that they knew, the fact that they were there, the fact that his mother was so involved with the behind the scenes kind of stuff that he understood, obviously, hey man, this is embarrassing for our friends, let's do something. So even though it's not my time spiritually, but he understood from a human point of view, okay, I have to do this thing, And so, that's who Jesus was, He didn't over spiritualize certain things, even though he was God himself. And so, I think that's just the importance of us having this conversation, is understanding, how we need to balance the two,
spiritual.
the spiritual and the emotional side of things. And so, I think this kind of leads us to actually what is, if you would, like to share with us a formal definition of emotional maturity.
So I think emotional maturity speaks of a person's ability to spot, to make sense of, and to manage their own emotions, but also manage the emotions of others, because obviously we are relational beings.
Yeah.
People will affect us just as much as we will affect people. And so part of the maturity, or part of the growth that we need to achieve, is letting go of those childish things. And part of that is, how do I learn to spot, to make sense of, and to manage my own stuff, but at the same time to be able to manage other people's emotions, and to know, okay, when is it my stuff and when is it another person's stuff. And I think many of us, we grow up, sometimes we treat emotions as good and bad, so we've got the good things, the happy, we are a happy family. Anything that has to do with anger, anything that has to do with, very intense emotions that are maybe on the hot side of things, we don't know how to handle that. And if you never learned that as a child, I don't think as an adult you're just going to wake up one morning and you know how to do that. And so there are adults who don't know how to spot their own emotions. And they don't know how to make sense of what they're going through, and they also don't even know how to manage. And because of that, they end up reacting the wrong way at the wrong time. And again, that's why you see we spoke about the toddler. And you have a toddler, an adult as a body, but emotionally you are a toddler. Why? Because you haven't quite managed you haven't learned, how to spot, how to make sense of, and how to manage your own emotions. And so that then ends up impacting different aspects of people's relationships, whether it is friendships, whether it is marriage, whether it is, family relationships, and it becomes a point of tension for many people.
And you mentioned the toddler, and I think it's also important for us to just kind of talk about the different stages, right? So we know there's the toddler stage of maturity, right? And then we have the adolescent or the teenage phase, and then we have the adult, right? So that is basically how we grow physically, but also how we should grow emotionally as well. So we know that as a toddler, you're selfish, everything is about me. You cry, you throw tantrums. We have a toddler, very much toddler at this stage, and we can see that, right? It's like the request doesn't match the emotion, right? She can be just asking for the phone, but it will be like, can I have the phone? So there's that outburst and anger and crying, overreaction, this emotional overreaction to things. And we see that some adults are still stuck there, right? If they don't get what they want, they throw a tantrum, and that is very much a childish toddler stage, And then with the adolescents, we have more of the eye for an eye kind of thing, If you treat me well, I'll treat you well. There's that thing where it's just, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth kind of thinking. And then the adult, what is the adult matured way of thinking?
And I think with the adult is where you are aware,
Yeah.
but at the same time you are kind of responsible. You've reached that stage again of emotional maturity where you know, okay, I can feel something, but I don't have to respond based on how I feel.
Yeah.
And so again, I'm aware that I'm angry now. And because I'm angry, how do I express the fact that I'm angry without allowing my anger to impact the people around me in a negative way? And that's a very hard thing to do.
Yeah.
But it takes that ability to be able to spot first that, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm frustrated. And then to be able to go, okay, now that I'm angry, now that I'm sad, where does this anger come from? Okay, this anger comes from the fact that, you've said this, you've done this. Can I express that to you to say, look, you did A, B, C, D. When you did A, B, C, D, this is how I felt. And because I'm in this space, I'm not in a position to be able to, say, for example, engage with you. I need to maybe take some time off just to process this and maybe to allow the steam to cool off before I can come back and speak to you. Can you see? So there's a sense in which, okay, I'm comfortable with my own emotions. I'm able to communicate where I'm at with people in a way that is healthy, but at the same time, and I'm able to also manage. And so it's not just about me, it's also about what do you do when someone else is in an emotional state that is not good. And how do you communicate to them that, look, the space that you're in is affecting us. And how do we make sure that we also don't allow another person's emotional state to affect us so negatively, to a point where sometimes you would see that people would tiptoe around certain individuals. Why? Because they know this person is
a ticking bomb.
Yeah, it's a ticking bomb. And oftentimes they don't take feedback very well. But again, part of that emotional maturity is how can we confront that?
We hope you're enjoying this episode so far. Please consider subscribing to our channel.
By subscribing to our channel, you're playing your part in growing our online community and helping us reach more people who are in need of healing, restoration, and growth. Thank you so much for your support.
But we're not going to confront it when the person is angry. We're going to wait for when the person is in a space where we can talk to them. And then maybe starting to push to say, look, as much as you might be in a toddler phase in terms of your emotional maturity, I'm not there. And part of helping you could be starting to push back to say, look, you cannot be in your toddler phase forever. Part of us being part of each other's life is to learn to challenge each other, to learn to be the mirror for each other, so that you can also learn to handle your own things. And part of that is like you need to start by being aware of the fact that you have this way of responding. And whenever you respond in this way, this is how it's affecting me. This is how it's affecting people around you. How can you become aware of your own emotional state so that you can then maybe start going, okay, how do I then learn to spot my own emotions? How do I learn to then make sense of them? And how do I learn to manage them? So you can be that mirror for the other person, so that they also then learn how to do what? They also learn to become emotionally mature.
And I think, just as you're discussing this, it's just highlighting the importance of emotional maturity in relationships. And we know as Christians, like that is what our walk is actually all about, right? It's a relationship with God and with others, and we know how important it is because we're dealing with people, we're dealing with human beings every single day. You know, our spouses, that's like one of the most, important relationship that you will have, and it's about being able to be mature. And we know we're not always mature, but it's again, like you said, being able to spot and manage, make sense of your own emotions and that of others, so it's a thing of, okay, if I'm not in that state, at least you will be able to identify and know how you need to respond in order to understand me better, and vice versa, because if we're both emotionally immature, it's just going to be a mess, because it will constantly be arguments because I'm now responding based off of how you're responding, and it just
kind of blows
up, and I think of the verse that says a quiet answer, turns away wrath. So it's like, if I'm fighting fire with fire, that's not gonna ease the conversation, but it's that gentleness, like we said, the compassion. When there's this wrath, anger, so I think, that's the reason why we're also discussing this, is just having to understand that. How do we achieve emotional maturity? Is it something that we can learn? We know it's something that has to take place. I mean, even Paul speaks about, when I was a child, I spoke like a child, now that I'm an adult, I must behave as an adult. So it's a spiritual thing, and I do believe that.
We hope you're enjoying this episode so far. Please consider subscribing to our channel.
By subscribing to our channel, you're playing your part in growing our online community and helping us reach more people who are in need of healing, restoration, and growth. Thank you so much for your support.
In order for us to understand spiritual maturity, He gave us, again, the physical understanding. There's a childlike, there's adolescent, and then there's adult, right? But what would you say, kind of impacts our ability to become emotionally mature?
So there are a number of things, and so I think the first one is, as human beings, we all have certain needs already from a younger age that we want to have fulfilled. And one of them is empathy and compassion. So if you were raised in a space where, as a child, in your emotional immaturity, you didn't experience a lot of empathy, a lot of compassion, it becomes hard for you to give something you've never received. And so if you were treated as an adult while you were a child, it's very easy for you to also not know how to empathize with other people. And so when you grow up, you don't know what it feels like to have someone say, I'm so sorry. When you cry, when you express a genuine need, someone comes and soothes you. If you are in a space where, as a child, you are criticized constantly, you are punished for things that are not your fault, or some things that are genuine needs that any toddler would have. If you were neglected, those things then become the foundation for emotional immaturity, because now sometimes what we might end up seeing is people who are overcompensating because I never received the care. I then go to the extreme side where I am too demanding, or sometimes it could be that because I never received the care, when I want to express myself, I struggle to put myself in the shoes of the other person to understand that responding in the way I'm responding is going to cause the other person to be hurt. It's going to cause the other person it's going to destroy our relationship. It's going to sour it. And that's number one. Number two.
Okay, sorry, can I stop you there and just ask for like a practical example, right? Because you speak about how when you're young, right? And you don't receive the empathy, so say for instance, oh, I got hurt, and the parent just says, okay, yeah, stop crying. That's kind of like suppressing the emotion. Something real happened, but you just thought that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how badly you got hurt. It's just that thing like, hey, sorry,
Stuff
I'm
it
laughing
up,
because I come from a culture, where it's like, hey, don't be a sissy. You have to chin up. Don't cry for unnecessary things. You must literally have like an X in your head, for people to actually respond. And so there's the extreme that can happen, right? In terms of how people will become as adults, right? They're still stuck there. So it's either, are you saying that they will be like people that will pity themselves or seek for pity a lot because that's not something that they received? Yeah, so the pity is the one extreme. What is the other? What it could be a practical example of the other side of that?
So I think there's a sense in which when you are met with empathy, you learn to be kind to yourself, but you also learn to be kind to other people, because there is a sense in which this is something that you've experienced. When you haven't experienced empathy, when you haven't experienced understanding, when you haven't experienced compassion, how are you supposed to give something that you yourself have never received? And that is kind of the one side of things. The other side of things is kids who are raised where they say yes to everything. Because obviously, as a child, as you grow older, as a toddler, a lot of your needs are very much based on your own self-centeredness. And that allows you to survive. But as you grow older, there needs to be a sense in which that empathy that you were met with is still going to be there for reasonable, genuine needs. But there needs to be a process of being frustrated. If you used to get things when you wanted them, how you wanted them, it's important that the parents start frustrating you slowly, because what that then teaches you is that the world doesn't revolve around you. There are things that you will get, but there are things that you also don't get. Why? Because you also need to learn in a very different way to put yourself in other people's shoes, to wait, and that allows you to regulate your own immediate need, your own impulses. Now, if you were raised in a space where your parents said yes to everything, what they are also communicating is that you can get everything you want. And then you go out into the world and you learn that that's not how it works. Because you were never frustrated, you will not know what being frustrated looks like or feels like. And now when you go to school and then you don't get your way, what happens? That emotion is going to overwhelm you. And when it overwhelms you, what are you going to do? You're likely to lash out. You're likely to act aggressively. And all of a sudden, we see how both sides of empathy and frustration, or lack of empathy or lack of frustration can lead to people who are emotionally dysregulated, people who are either too selfish because they never receive the love and the empathy, or who cannot put themselves in the shoes of others, or people who are too entitled, and then they get a rude awakening from the world and they struggle to manage their emotional state, and they end up behaving
We hope you're enjoying this episode so far. Please consider subscribing to our channel.
By subscribing to our channel, you are playing your part in growing our online community and helping us grow, reach more people who are in need of healing, restoration, and growth. Thank you so much for your support.
In ways that damage their friendships, that damage relationships that matter to them, and you can see how the consequences can really, show up in different aspects of a person's life.
Sure. So you're saying basically how you are able to grow emotionally or attain that emotional maturity is based off of how you were taught to regulate your emotions at a young age, but also the empathy that you received, growing up. So it's that wherever, and would you say it's just when you're young, or is there different phases where people can get, stuck emotionally?
And I think that's actually a good question, because yes, there is the kind of being a child side where I received empathy, but I was also frustrated enough that I learned that I can be empathic toward myself and others, but I can also be patient when I don't get my way. That balance is important. But some people freeze. Trauma has a way of freezing you or getting you stuck in a stage where you experience the trauma. So say, for example, if as a 7-year-old, as an 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old, or however old, you go through something traumatic, from an emotional point of view, you are stuck in a stage or a phase of your life for as long as that traumatic experience has not been processed. And so say, for example, if you went through sexual abuse and you were silenced, what you learn is to respond in a silent way. Why? Because that's what you experienced as part of going through that traumatic experience of withdrawing. And so there's a sense in which, yes, some things are from childhood, some things are from traumatic experiences that we've gone through, and we are stuck in that stage. And for as long as we haven't processed that thing, it's going to be hard for us to move forward in a way that is healthy, that allows us to understand that that happened then. And as much as possible, I tried to survive, all things considered. Now I'm in a different space, and I need to maybe learn to relate to myself differently now, so that I can live a life that is healthy and a life that, that doesn't impact me in a negative way or even impact the people around me.
Sure. Very interesting. And I think, it just goes back to, I think, always this, the way you are raised, just provides a framework for you in your adult life. Because again, when you're young, you go through quite a few things, and it's how your parents respond to what happens to you and how they teach you to cope with whatever happens. It can be in a healthy way or it can be in an unhealthy way. And that basically becomes your framework on how to deal with things as you get older, So, it's crazy how much, our upbringing really impacts the way we deal with things, and how it can impact, our relationships. But I think, again, it's not too late. I know a lot of damage could have been done already, but I think this is also a turning point for some people, that things can change, and God wants to heal you and show you new ways of dealing with things, giving you a new framework on how to handle things. You might have grown up in a certain situation, but God is able to help you heal from that and to teach you new ways of coping, of dealing with people, just to improve your life, man, you know. It's about improving your relationship with God, but also He wants us to be in good, loving relationships, and emotional maturity is a huge aspect of good quality relationships, you know. And I think it's important to leave people with practical, you know, tools for identifying. Maybe you don't know actually, am I emotionally mature or not?
Sure.
And so it's just some of, you know, practical things or situations that you can ask yourself in order to understand, you know, your emotional maturity level. So think about your last argument. You know, who showed up to that fight? The adult you, or the rejected, neglected, wounded toddler child version of you, you know? And as we spoke about it, you know, it's the toddlers, you know, outbursts, you know, wanting your way, or were you able to spot, you know, and manage, regulate your own emotions to understand that, okay, I was angry because of A, B, and C, and this is why I responded in this way, able to apologize and also see the other person's perspective, right? And then if your emotions had an age, how old would they be today? I think, as we discussed the three different, you know, stages of growth, is like, and I think again, it's not a one thing fits all. I think there is, I think it's like, if you can't just be a toddler and you're a toddler in everything, I think certain maybe situations might make you react as a toddler, you know, in other stages that you might be more of an adult, or, you know, in other situations you're more of a adolescent where it's an eye for an eye kind of way. So I think it's important just to understand that as well.
And I think it's also about understanding that emotional maturity is all about how comfortable you are with sitting with your own emotions, because many of us react to situations rather than responding, and oftentimes that comes from not being comfortable with sitting with our own stuff, and not just our own stuff. Sometimes it's even other people's stuff.
Definitely.
Can we provide space for other people to express themselves, and can we be comfortable with being containers for other people's emotions, and how comfortable we are with being a container for someone else has a lot to do with the level of comfort we have with sitting with our own stuff. That is why you will see two people, a child and an adult, they could be going through the same experience. How a child responds to that experience is going to be different from an adult, or at least there is an expectation that a child, because of the level of emotional maturity, will be able to respond in a way that is more adult-like. But the sad reality is many people are not comfortable with sitting with their own stuff, let alone sitting with the stuff of their partner, their husband, their friends.
Because just as an example, just to interject there, but you know, just a personal example, I used to cry a lot as a young child, you know. And as I shared earlier, of like the culture that we come from, it's like, hey man, stop crying, you know, it's over and done with. We try to stop the crying as soon as possible. It's like we can't tolerate that emotion. It's very uncomfortable, you know, even funerals, you know, oh, you must be strong, you know, because we were taught to suppress that crying. We understand, obviously, there's kids that can cry, you know. That's a bit,
the
you know,
extreme side
exactly, you know. But it's something that I had to learn now with our little one, where she's crying and it's okay to let her cry, you know, and then soothe her, comfort her, and then ask her, okay, once she's calmed down, okay, so what do you need? What is it? Oh, you got hurt. Acknowledging what happened and why she's crying, instead of saying, hey, are you crying? Because my father used to say, oh, is that Tammy? She's crying again. And so, exactly. So I would like, you know, no, I'm not crying, you know, because it was that thing where it's just like, you can't cry. So I think it really is that, like, if you aren't able to manage your own emotions, it's difficult, especially that kind of emotion that was suppressed in you. When someone responds with that emotion, you don't know what to do. It's like, so even like when your child is crying and you also lose it, it's because I don't know what to do with this emotion, because when I was younger, that emotion was suppressed. So now how do I even you know, handle that? So I think, that's a very important thing just to
and I think at the end of the day, as you've heard, emotional maturity is about that balance. We can over spiritualize things that we should confront and deal with, but at the same time, you know, it's important for us to also, again, be spiritually mature just as much as we emotionally mature. And again, this is a journey. This is not something that happens overnight, but it starts with maybe us asking ourselves, you know, if you had to think about, you know, the emotional maturity versus spiritual maturity, which side do you tend to kind of focus more on? And how different would your life be if you had to maybe focus on the side where you pay less attention to? And so again, and hopefully this is going to start a process that allows you to learn to sit with your own stuff, to try and spot those stuff, make sense of them, and find a way to manage them, and not only manage your own stuff, but also hopefully manage other people's emotional states.
We hope you're enjoying this episode so far. Please consider subscribing to our channel.
By subscribing to our channel, you're playing your part in growing our online community and helping us grow, reach more people who are in need of healing, restoration, and growth. Thank you so much for your support.